I can't help but compare the way The Rock started at WrestleMania and the way he looked just a year later. I mean, you can't tell the story of The Rock without talking about this kind of perseverance. I want to remind everybody after that awesome week we just broke down in 1998, a year prior to that, he was working the Sultan at WrestleMania 13. That's a lot different than what we're doing here. And the night after WrestleMania 14 is where we see The Rock start taking over as the leader of the nation. That leads to an Unforgiven match with unlikely tag team partners, Ken Shamrock and Steve Blackman, taking on Rock, D'Lo, and Mark Henry of the Nation. The baby faces get the win, and Farouk gets the pin on Rock to set up Over the Edge. But at the show, Rock is pile driven on a chair by Farouk before the match, except the chair moved. So it's just like a regular pile driver, but The Rock will still stretch it off like it was a serious injury. As an announcer, how difficult is that when you know the original plan was we're going to do a stretcher job for Rock? He's supposed to take it on the chair.
Yeah.
The chair's not there, but for whatever reason, we don't do it again. They just play it off and keep going. Do you just try to put your blinders on and call what's on the monitor and move on to the next thing?
That's it. I describe what we're seeing.
Yes.
And what I think it means. I knew in general terms there was going to be a stretcher job, but how it was going to be achieved, et cetera, I didn't know. But it was just all in that growth of The Rock, the journey. And it was inevitable. He and Farouk had to have a fight, and they did.
Well, and what's cool is when this chair moves, they cover it up. I thought at first, man, this does not look good. But whoever's helping with the writing, whether it's Bruce or it's Vince or whoever it is, Sergeant Slaughter, who was the commissioner at the time for the WWF, he doesn't believe that The Rock's really hurt. And Rock's going to come out with a neck brace, and this becomes a whole storyline. Now we know he didn't take the pile driver on the chair; it was just a quote unquote regular pile driver. But he comes out with the neck brace, and he still beats Farouk in 5 minutes. I love that we at least tried to address it and tried to cover it up. And it gave The Rock another chance to show some of those acting chops, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It just kept feeding him material that he could carry with him and make better. That's the thing about a great star, is that they take what the booking or creative committee presents them and they make it better. And Sarge, pardon me, Sarge did a great job in his role. I love Sarge. He's a credit to the wrestling business. Still is to this very day. But I thought Rock, if you look at it from a critical eye, maybe he oversold the neck brace a little bit, and it made us suspicious that he's not really hurt. So, but it was an interesting little storyline, nice little element to the story, I thought.
Well, what was interesting to me is, the way we're sort of just moving on from Farouk. And I know that at the end of this match, that's when we really get started with DX coming out to make the save, because they still hate, I guess, the newest member of the nation, which at this point, believe it or not, is Owen Hart. So they're going to have a really big feud, and that's really going to chart the course for The Rock for the rest of 98. Nation of Domination led by The Rock against DX, and certainly later, as we'll get there, Triple H and The Rock in singles competition. But before we move on from Farouk, I got to ask, did Farouk feel a certain type of way, like the nation was put together for him? So the real life Ron Simmons.
Well, was it really? Was it really? I don't know if that's factual, Conrad. I can see you saying that. But the Nation of Domination was put together to implode, and The Rock come out on the other side, whether he'd be a baby face or a heel.
So, well, he wasn't in the original plans for the nation, though. I mean, this started in November of '96 before he would have even. He's debuting as a baby face at that point. I'm just wondering. People are always worried about, especially before guaranteed contracts, my spot, brother. Was Ron Simmons concerned that, hey man, if he's the new leader, What am I doing? Where does that leave for me?
I
Right?
think that's a logical question.
Yeah.
I think that's a logical question, and I'm sure it crossed Farouk Ron Simmons' mind because he was a little older and he'd been around a while, and the nation thing had maybe run its course. It certainly was getting toward the end. So, but I always looked at the nation as it was a good thing for Ron in the beginning, and then adding the Rock to it just changed the whole dynamic, and I think for the better. How do you add Rock to a faction, and the faction not be better?
Let's get back to 1998, man. King of the Ring 98 is coming up. So, of course, The Rock is in the tournament. He's going to defeat Vader and then Triple H to make it onto the pay per view in the semifinals. And that's where we've got Dan Severn. And I think a lot of Dan, but him and The Rock just feels like a styles clash.
It was.
Rock gets the win, and then he faces his old foe in the main event, Ken Shamrock. Man, this Shamrock feud is
It's got
one
legs.
of the
It's got legs,
yeah.
Conrad. You know, people want to see some more of it, so it was good. I like I said earlier, they fit each other. They fit each other's mentality and their skill set. Just tremendous. So, yeah, Severn was a stopgap. It got Rock to Shamrock, and then here they go again. And they just had that match down. I mean, they didn't really have. I don't. Maybe you could think about something. I can't think of any Shamrock Rock match that was horrible or not good. They're always solid as hell.
Natural chemistry. Yeah.
Yeah, there's ankle lock by Shamrock. It's funny how the submission guys can use a hold like that. It's so effective and it's safe. That's something that more wrestlers should think about nowadays is doing things that are somewhat safe. We talked about Dynamite last night. There was risks taken in that on that show. These guys, I don't know what it is about live television, whether it be Dynamite or Collision or certainly the pay-per-views. The talent just seemed to turn out. I mean, everybody wanted to outdo the other guy, which is great competition. So we got a very healthy AEW does a very healthy locker room, but it's a very competitive locker room. Everybody wants a better spot, and the way you get a better spot is you go out and you perform. That's how I look at it. So I was trying to think of one match last night that I really I thought Okada and Eddie Kingston, right?
Yep.
You know, I really liked that match. It overachieved in my estimation. It was physical. Eddie Kingston's evolved into one of the most reliable stars on AEW or in AEW, and certainly Okada's a proven commodity as well. People are just getting to know him, but he's silky smooth. You know, he's a top 5 guy in the world, at least in my opinion. Then you had Ospreay, who's got an entirely different style. That Ospreay match at Dynasty with Bryan Danielson is something to be coveted and not to be missed. I hope I don't miss it.